Hi everyone, today I'm going to talk to Hachidori amplifier manufacturer and the president of the company. Hi Jonathan. We're going to ask you a couple of questions. Thank you for agreeing to this interview. So my father is going to ask you questions and I'll translate them into English for you. So are we ready?
В настоящее время создано большое количество усилителей воспроизведения для магнитофонов.
So there are many amplifiers for tape machines these days.
Я хотел бы узнать, чем отличается ваше устройство, особенно учитывая его высокую цену.
So we would like to know why your amplifier is so different from others, considering the price also, because it's quite expensive.
It's quite expensive, yes.
Преимущества.
So the advantages and everything you can brag about.
Okay. Well, I've done a survey of many of the currently available, I shouldn't say currently available, because most Pro machines haven't been manufactured since the mid to late 80s. But anyway, 15 to 20 years ago, it was very cheap and easy to source some of the best Pro machines. And I bought many of them and listened to them. And there were variations in sound quality, but I found limitations in most of them, especially the later Studers and Nagras, things like that. I felt that the audio circuitry was way too complicated and compromised.
В сравнении с подобными
If you
устройствами
could compare them
современными,
to
Доши,
modern amplifiers,
Yes.
why is yours better? What
Well,
makes it stand out?
I couldn't really say in terms of sound quality because I haven't listened to a Doshi or a Mero myself. Those would probably be the two most obvious competitors to my product.
Хорошо, тогда попроси рассказать вкратце о техническом устройстве. Is it tube amplifier?
It's
Could you
tube.
tell something about the technical
Yes.
details?
It is tube, and before I give you any more details, technical details, I should say that of the Pro machines that I listened to, my favorites among them were Ampex, especially the 351, the ATR 102, and my favorite of all is the MR70. It's very rare, very difficult to find, but I have a few of them. And that was probably more than any other tape machine the inspiration for this unit.
All right.
But it uses Nuvistor tubes, and a problem with Nuvistors is it's extremely difficult to find ones that are quiet enough, and I felt that disqualified it as a basic architecture. So I tried to achieve that level or a little bit better level of sound quality with more commonly available audio tubes, especially the 12AX7s, which are used for guitar amplification, so they're always going to be readily available. Some of the other inspirations from the MR70 were the very special output transformers that it used. So I spent a tremendous amount of time reverse engineering the transformers and finding a company to reproduce something like them. But they had to be re-engineered for the tubes that I wanted to use instead of the Nuvistors. Other things I can say about the technology, one of them is that using an outboard tape preamp with a transport, or actually a playback head that was never designed to be used with an outboard preamplifier is a bit difficult because the internal impedance of the head, primarily the inductance of the head, doesn't react well with the capacitance of the cable, which you use to connect to an outboard. You can get acceptable results by using a short cable of low capacitance, and some people do that. I didn't want to impose those sort of limitations on customers. So I'm using a cable shield driver. That is a circuit which is added to the basic amplifier circuit, which completely eliminates the effect of the cable loading. And it makes it possible to get the best possible response from the head, even better than in the original machine.
How much time did it take you to come up with it? Maybe you could just a brief story. So.
Okay. Well, I worked on the basic circuit architecture for maybe a year to a year and a half. There's an equalization amplifier, and that's followed by a 600 ohm line output driver amplifier. So those are the two basic functional blocks of the preamplifier. And I probably spent, 6 months or so on the line amplifier, integrating that with the output transformer, making it perform as well as possible. The equalizer amplifier was much more difficult because I'm using an active feedback circuit, which is more similar to the Ampex 351 than the MR70. And to get enough gain for CCIR and AESEQ is very challenging with that architecture. So that required adding some additional circuitry to get the additional gain, make the noise low, and achieve the flat frequency response at CCIR and AES equalization, which is more challenging than the NAB equalization that the old Ampex tube machines were originally designed for.
And may I ask you, because you've produced everything in Japan, right?
Right.
But maybe you can tell me the difference between the US and Japanese markets in terms of hi-fi, of course. If, like you've been living there for a long time.
I've been living there for about 30 years. And one of the fundamental differences, I would say, one of the things that really awakened me to some new ideas was that some of the most seasoned Japanese audiophiles that I know of favor very high efficiency speakers and very old tube amplifiers. And being exposed to many of those, even more so than I was in my home country, I found that the Japanese may be onto something. It's not that I love everything about those old technologies, but they were they were great teachers. And so
you would say you learned more from them. You learned more from them than you would have done that in the US.
Well, I learned some new and different things than I
Okay.
had learned in the US before I went to Japan. Like, for example, when I was living in the US, I used electrostatic speakers. I thought that was the best technology available. I no longer believe that to be the case, generally speaking.
What do you think then about it?
About
what is better?
electrostatics?
Yeah, right.
I think electrostatic speakers, for example, the quads, are very neutral and have a very lovely, beautiful mid-range. But they're somewhat compromised in their dynamic capability. And I feel that some of the detail and resolution in music comes from that dynamic capability. And I think that's also important for evaluating amplifiers.
Вообще так изысканно, да. Я понял. Вопрос. Какова предполагаемая производственная программа? Количество там, в год, допустим?
So what is your commercial program at the moment? So per year, how many are you planning to produce? Do you have any?
This is all hand wired, and
Okay,
it's
so all kind of deal.
Я понимаю.
it's quite complex. I think it takes me about 1 month to make one unit. So I don't expect to sell more than maybe 10 units a year.
Ну, то есть,
10 штук в
грубо говоря,
год.
штук 10 в год,
Да.
да? Да.
So there's a very limited market for something so expensive, which is just about right because I won't be able to make too many more than that. But in the future, I may think of a lower cost version, which can be built in higher quantities.
Would you reveal a price?
For this?
Yeah.
Yes, it's set at $75,000 US. One more thing I'd like to mention about it is one of the things that I found fascinating after living in Japan for some years is the differences in opinions on passive components, resistors and capacitors, for example, for audio equipment. And at first I thought that the Japanese were absolutely crazy with their ideas, using carbon resistors and paper capacitors or mica capacitors. But I tried to keep an open mind and be objective and make direct comparisons. And I decided maybe some of these experienced Japanese audiophiles know something that I didn't. So I've incorporated a lot of those ideas into this design.
Есть еще вопросы?
Нет, спасибо большое.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. It was lovely
My pleasure.
talking to you. Thank you.
You too.